houses hold secrets. Behind closed doors, behind painted smiles, behind the perfect family portrait hanging in the hallway. This house held something far darker. February 9th, 2007. A quiet suburb outside Detroit, Michigan. Snow on the ground, lights in the windows. A neighborhood where nothing ever happened. A successful executive flew home from her business trip. She had a husband, 2 children, a life that looked complete. By Valentine's Day, she was gone. No luggage, no goodbye, no trace. Her husband said she left in the middle of the night. He said she walked out, got into a car, disappeared into the dark. But here's what he didn't say. She never left that house at all. My name doesn't matter. What matters is her name, Tara Grant. And this is her story. Who was Tara? Tara Grant was the kind of woman who made rooms feel alive, sharp, focused. The kind of person who didn't just set goals, she dismantled every obstacle in her path. She was an executive at a major automotive supplier. Every week, she flew between Detroit and San Juan, Puerto Rico, managing operations, closing deals, making things happen at a level most people only dream about. And when the weekends came, she came home, to her children, to soccer practice, to family dinners around a table she had worked hard to provide. Her husband, Stephen, once had ambitions too. Politics, public life, the kind of future built on charm and presence. But ambition that goes nowhere doesn't just fade, it festers. While Tara climbed, Stephen stayed home. He managed the house, coached soccer, smiled in photos, outwardly supportive. Inwardly, something was rotting. He monitored her emails, tracked her calls, convinced himself she was being unfaithful. He didn't want a partner. He wanted control. And the one thing a controlling person cannot survive is feeling powerless. The night everything changed. February 9th. Tara came home earlier than expected, Sunday instead of Monday. Stephen didn't like that. What happened next, only one person knows for certain, and that person has told many versions of the same story. There was an argument in the bedroom, late at night. Stephen would later claim she threatened him, threatened divorce, threatened to take the children. He said she walked out, got into a black car, vanished into the night around 2 a.m. But there were no ride records, no airport footage, not a single witness. What investigators did find were voicemails, messages Stephen left for Tara shortly after she supposedly disappeared. His voice shifting between panic and something else. Something rehearsed, something too perfect. He wasn't searching for his wife. He was building a story. The performance. 5 days passed before Stephen reported Tara missing. 5 days. He told police she had flown back to Puerto Rico, but airline records showed no booking. Her credit cards? Untouched. Her passport, inactive. Her phone, completely silent. Detective Sergeant Pam McLean sensed it immediately. Something was wrong, not with the case, with him. Stephen was too cooperative, too rehearsed. He had answers before questions were even asked. Then came the television appearance. He stood in front of cameras, voice trembling, eyes glistening. He pleaded for Tara's safe return. He looked like a man falling apart. But grief has a texture, a rawness. This was performance. The camera loved him. The detectives did not. What the garage held. 3 weeks after Tara vanished, police executed a search warrant on the Grant home. Stephen was present. Calm, polite. He asked if he could take the family dog for a walk. They let him go. Inside the garage, investigators found a large plastic storage container, sealed. Unusual placement. When they opened it, they found Tara, wrapped in plastic, partially dismembered, stored inside her own garage, feet away from her children's bicycles and toys. The cold February air had masked the smell. Stephen had been living in that house, eating at that table, sleeping under that roof, with what he had done. By the time officers rushed outside to find him, Stephen Grant was already gone. The truth in the cold. He drove north into the freezing wilderness of Michigan's winter. He stopped at a store and bought alcohol, sleeping pills, and razor blades. Later, he told officers he had hoped they would shoot him. A final act, staged. Even then. Instead, they found him beneath a tree, weak, hypothermic, barely conscious. And in the hospital, confronted with what they knew, he confessed. The argument, the rage that took over in the bedroom, the moment he strangled her. He described cutting her body apart at his father's machine shop, transporting pieces in garbage bags, hiding evidence in a park. He spoke without tears, without trembling. He spoke as if explaining a problem he had solved. Detectives called his demeanor disturbingly flat. Not guilt, not grief, just explanation. The mind behind the mask. This was not an explosion of rage, not a moment of madness from a man pushed beyond his limits. This was the collapse of an identity. A man who once imagined himself powerful, slowly reduced to feeling invisible. A man who could not tolerate the one thing he feared most, being left behind. Experts who study intimate partner violence recognize the pattern. Control slipping, resentment building quietly in the dark, an ego that cannot survive perceived betrayal. When the world wouldn't obey him, he chose to destroy the one person who had moved beyond his reach. Not out of love, out of possession. Justice and what remains. In 2007, Stephen Grant was convicted of second-degree murder and mutilation of a corpse. He was sentenced to 50 to 80 years in prison. But no sentence rebuilds a family. Tara's sister now raises her children. Every year, people who loved Tara gather in her memory, fighting for awareness around domestic violence and coercive control. Because here is what they want you to understand. The danger isn't always loud. It doesn't always shatter windows or leave visible bruises. Sometimes it smiles at family gatherings. Sometimes it cheers from the sidelines at soccer practice. Sometimes it weeps for the cameras. And sometimes the person begging for help already knows exactly where she is. Tara Grant was 34 years old. She deserved more than what that house gave her. Remember her name. In memory of Tara Grant, 1972 to 2007. The warning signs everyone missed. Speak like you're letting the listener in on something they were never meant to know. Every pause is intentional. Every silence is a door left open. Do not rush. Do not perform. Just reveal. Low, measured, like turning a key in a lock. The sentence came down. The courtroom exhaled, and the world moved on, the way the world always does. But moving on is not the same as understanding. A prison sentence tells us what the law decided. It tells us nothing about what the darkness decided, long before anyone was watching. So let's go back, not to the crime, to the silence before it. Almost dreamlike, like narrating something beautiful that's already rotting. If you had driven past the Grant home on any ordinary morning, you would have seen nothing wrong. A trimmed lawn, children's bicycles in the driveway, a man in the neighborhood who knew everyone's name, 2 cars, a good school district, holiday lights that went up on time. From the outside, it was everything. And that is not a coincidence. That is the design. Psychologists who study intimate partner violence will tell you the same thing over and over again. The most dangerous homes are rarely the loudest ones. They are the quietest, the ones where the performance of normalcy is so polished that even the people living inside it start to believe the act. There's a term for what was happening beneath that surface: identity collapse. When a person's sense of self, their worth, their status, their reason for existing, is built not from within, but from control over another person. Any shift in that control doesn't feel like inconvenience. It feels like erasure. For Stephen Grant, every success Tara achieved was a quiet earthquake. Every promotion, every business trip, every night she came home with that particular exhaustion that belongs only to people who are building something, was a mirror he couldn't look away from, and he despised what it showed him. Deliberate, almost clinical, like reading from a case file in a dark room. Let me tell you how it actually begins. Not with violence, never with violence, not at first. It begins with a phone picked up and set back down in exactly the right place. It begins with an inbox opened in secret, messages read, screenshots taken, questions stored away for later. It begins with sentences that sound like love. I just need to know where you are. I just don't understand why you need so much time away. I just feel like you're becoming someone I don't recognize. Investigators discovered that Stephen had been accessing Tara's computer, searching through her private life, looking for evidence of something, anything, that would validate the narrative already consuming him. But here is what makes cases like this so difficult to see from the outside. The searching was never really about evidence. It was about ownership. The cold, unspoken belief that another person's inner world belongs to you. And when that person begins to pull away, when they begin to take up space beyond the cage you've built, something shifts. Some people fall apart when they feel that loss. Others get very, very quiet and start making plans. Drops to almost a whisper, slow, disturbed. Now, I want you to think about this carefully. After Tara disappeared, Stephen Grant went on television. He sat in front of cameras. He spoke in a measured, grieving voice. He asked the public for help. He asked for prayers. And the entire time, he knew exactly where she was. Forensic psychologists have a name for what happens in moments like that. Duping delight. A quiet, almost involuntary rush of satisfaction that comes from deceiving people successfully, from looking directly into a camera and performing grief you do not feel. During his interrogation, detectives reported something that is difficult to describe without feeling cold. Stephen laughed. Not broke down, not asked for water with shaking hands. Laughed. He moved between conversations about what he had done and ordinary small talk, the way you might discuss the weather between errands. That is not the behavior of someone consumed by rage. Rage, at least, is human. That is something quieter, something that had been practicing for a very long time. A compartmentalization so complete that reality had become just another thing to manage. Soft now, heavy, like someone finally saying the thing no one wanted to say. Here is the question that haunts every case like this. Were there signs? There are always signs. The problem is that we have been taught to explain them away. We call isolation devotion. We call control protection. We call monitoring love. We call resentment stress. Relationship has rough patches. He's just going through something. It's not that serious. But there is something that law enforcement statistics confirm again and again. Something that survivors know in their bones before they know it in words. The single most dangerous moment in a relationship built on control is the moment one person decides to leave. That night in February, Tara mentioned divorce, and something that had been coiling silently for years finally moved. Tara's children are still out there somewhere, living, growing up, carrying a night they didn't choose and can never fully put down. They lost their mother, and in the same breath, they lost the version of their father they thought they knew. Both gone, one night. That is the part of these cases that the headlines skip. The verdict comes, the cameras leave, and two children wake up every morning in a world that cracked open and was never fully repaired. Cases like this matter, not because they are dramatic, but because they are not rare. Because the home that looks exactly like this one exists on streets in every city, behind every kind of door. And the person inside it, the one smiling in the family photos, might be the last person anyone would suspect. Danger doesn't look dangerous. That's what makes it dangerous. If this made you uncomfortable, sit with that feeling. Don't explain it away. Because the most terrifying crimes in this world are not random. They do not erupt from nowhere. They grow in silence, in homes that look just like the ones on your street, behind smiles you've seen 1,000 times, behind voices you trust. The warning signs were always there. The question is whether we're willing to believe what we see. If you want to keep looking closer, subscribe, because the truth has a habit of hiding in the most ordinary places.
Don't miss the next terrifying tale. Subscribe to Hanuman Fear Files.